right? Monday morning, we have a brand new lot of opportunities that lay ahead of us. Right, we have a week, and this is certainly the start of the working week. And I kind of look at this time, and I chat to a lot of people, and I think there are some people that will take until lunchtime today to really find their mojo, right? And then the same kind of people kind of like lose their mojo by midday on Friday. It's like, really, you've just lost 20% of your week if you do that, right? I just find that some people will look at a week, whether they work 5 or 6 days, doesn't really matter. They'll look at a week and they're just like out of the gates and they're crushing it and they're making every, the maximum out of every opportunity. And some people not so much. And I don't know whether you know this, but we only really get 4,000 weeks in our life. Right now, for the younger generation that are on here, you may get a little bit longer due to advances in science and things like that. But really, like 50 weeks a year and 80 years is 4,000 weeks. You get 4,000 weeks. Now, when I say that, some of you are probably doing some maths on your notebook now, going, "Oh, bugger, how many have gone already?" And good. Hopefully, that kind of puts some healthy pressure on you. Like if you only get 4,000 weeks and you've already half of them are past, then the reason why I say that is I want you to grab the magnitude of how precious a week of your life is, and so you want to make sure that in your week you're putting it all on the field, right? You want to be playing, all out, all in, all out, full out, 100%, because you don't get that many of them. And and to me that's important to understand because it gives you perspective. There are people on this that are part of this group who are in their 20s and in their 30s. For you guys, it's very easy to think that life is really long because it seems that, and people like me seem old to you. I don't feel that. I still feel like I'm 20 or something. But but Bible says life is but a breath, and so it is but a breath. It's a very short period of time to achieve so much, and so the last thing you want to be doing is cruising through life. And when I say all in, and I'm about to get some hats made up that are hashtag all in, because to me it's a life philosophy. It's not all in business. It's all in, which means all in business, all in with your family, all in with the Lord, all in with your health and fitness, all in. Like whatever you find yourself doing in the moment, you are all in. So for me, when I'm hanging out with my 3 girls, I'm all in. I'm engaged. I'm trying to be with them. I've pushed everything else aside. I'm all in with them. When I'm here at the business and I'm working, for however many hours I'm at the business, I'm all in. I am maximizing my time, right? If you were, listen, some of you live like that anyway, and some of you not so much. If you were to live all in, meaning that whilst you were at work building your business, you were all in, some of you wouldn't actually have to work a 12-hour day. Some of you could actually do 12 hours of work in 8 hours because you're all in, and then you'd have time to go home and be with the people that matter so much, right? So, that's just a thought. That's just a thought about living all in. But this week that's ahead of you, we need to make weeks matter in our life because you need to be intentional. You never build a great life by default, right? It's life by design. It's being intentional that makes a difference. And if weeks matter, then probably days matter. And if days matter, then hours matter. And if hours matter, then minutes matter. And that's just how I choose to use my life. Like, I want to be accountable. For the next hour, what was the fruit of that hour in my business? Right? In the next minute, what did I get across, right? For me, I want to get to the end of a day and I actually move the needle. And so that's how I think. And that requires a whole bunch of intensity around that. And by the way, that's just what I like. I like passion and intensity because I think that's what produces results in people's life, both in business and outside, right? If you have passion and zeal and intensity for searching the scriptures, Well, you're going to have more knowledge and build deeper wells inside of you than if you just passively go around reading a little bit here and a little bit there and saying, "Lord, speak to me." Right? You would produce more fruit in your life about understanding the hidden things of the kingdom if you're intentional. Like reading, "Lord, give me answers. Show me this. Why did this happen? Why did this happen?" If you bring that intensity and that passion, then of course you'll get better from it. So like this week that's ahead of you, it's some of you could look at it like it's 1 week on my 90-day plan. Yeah, it is 1 week. It's 1 week out of 12, okay? Which is actually something like 7% of the 90-day plan happens this week. You want to make sure you're crushing it. You want to make sure you're in there and you're making sure that you get all your post-it notes and you tick them off. And so here's what I would say to you. If you haven't been playing that intensely, that all in up until this point, you can make that decision like that. You can make that decision. Behind making the decision, you've probably got to change some behaviors, right? And that's always a good thing to do, and we should always be auditing. If you haven't been playing full out, all in, it's okay. Just don't stay like that, because you're just going to produce better results if you do. So you literally just have to make a decision that goes, whatever. Some of you would be 4 weeks into your 90-day plan. Some of you might be, in fact, some of you might be at the end of your 90-day plan and you're about to write your next one. It doesn't matter where you are. If you feel like you haven't been playing full out up until this point, you just make a decision. I'm going to from now on. And you just decide, I'm going to start crushing those post-it notes. I'm going to start bringing some stuff forward on my 90-day plan because I've got more time. And I'm going to start going all in with that. And by the way, if you do that, I'll be the first to champion you on because it's not easy, right? As humans, our flesh wants the path of least resistance, which is why we have to rule over our spirit and just decide intentionally to play full on. But I want you guys to recalibrate. Use this moment right now to recalibrate and say, you know what? Even if you feel like you've been playing at 100% no less, then I would say to you, can you carry that to another domain in your life? Because most of the people that play 100% in business are neglecting health, family, fitness, and that sort of stuff. If you're playing at 100% and you fully believe that and it's true, then I would say to you, stretch yourself and take that 100% to other areas. If you're not playing at 100%, I would say to you, use this moment now to recalibrate and say, I've been letting myself off the hook. It's not okay. This is not how I get the best from my life. And from this moment forward, I'm going to play full on. And then the next thing you do is you look at your Post-it note and go bang and start ripping it off. Okay? Start ripping it off. So I just noticed Alicia's comment in there. It's a point. Turn that into a question, and I'll answer it for you, right, as we go. We're about 2 minutes away from me getting into your questions, so feel free to start putting your questions in the comments box, and I'll work my way through those. Remember, when it comes to questions, specificity is powerful, right? You ask me a generic question like, how do I improve my cash flow? I'm forced to give you a generic answer. If you ask me a specific question, then I can give you a specific answer, right? So that's going to be better for you. I'll be able to serve you better if you are more specific in the way you answer questions. So yeah, you get to choose though. Like that's the beauty of life, I reckon. It's like you can either be driven by external circumstances, right? Or you can actually just choose in any moment to think what you want to think, to be who you want to be, to act how you want to act. You get to choose. It's the one thing they can never take from you, right? I remember there's a book called Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl, spends his life in detention camp, and he learnt how to rule over his spirit. I think he might have even said, "You can take my body, but you'll never be able to take my mind." And basically, he just learned it during the atrocities of what was going on. In fact, what he said is, "You'll never get me to hate you," which I think is really powerful. They treated him so bad. He said, "Yes, but I get to choose. I get to choose my thoughts, my emotions, and my feelings." And I think that's really powerful because we get to choose, right? You can either be driven by external, motivations and stimulus that are pulling you in, or actually you get to choose you, and you get to choose your thoughts and your meanings to everything all day, every day. And so that to me is how you practice ruling over yourself.
Why is it that one person could desire to build a great business and set about doing all of the work, and and somebody else can desire to build a great business but not act on it. They're the kind of questions that get me buzzed and get me inspired. Like, I want to know human behavior enough because that's what helps me help you. Like, what makes two people with the same opportunities ahead of them, with the same background, with the same potential, with the same desire to build a great business, but one does it and one doesn't? That's, I guess it's an age-old question, but one that I've been exploring for maybe 20 years. And I think it's a few things. In fact, that it's lots and lots and lots of things. But as I reflect on what it might be, I can't help but think that one of the biggest leverage factors is to crystallize, to get a really clear picture in your mind of what that life looks like when you've achieved it, right? And of course, you don't know because you're not there. But as you sit today, you can kind of fast forward in your mind to that spot and chew it over and start to get a picture of what that looks like. And so I guess, part of the pushback on this little thing is that it can be a little bit foo-foo and a bit woo-woo. And that's right too, because we just don't want to be like that. We don't want to be all fluff and no action. So that's a real thing. But at some degree, as cliche it is, we actually do need to spend time using our God-given imagination so that we can storytell and role play and create scenarios and movies in our mind of what that will look like. Like, one of the things God gave us was an imagination so that we can run scenarios, so that we can role play with ourselves, so that we can effectively, go out into the future at some point and create a life in our mind. And I think it's a very, very powerful tool that not enough people do. And so, like, one of my core beliefs is if you can't see it, you can't be it, right? And so it's a good tool for you to go and spend time each day, every few days, whatever, actually just creating scenarios in your mind about the kind of life and business and things like that you want to go create, right? Start running a story in your mind about what it will be like to give a check to your favorite church or your favorite organization. Start running scenarios in your mind of what it will be like to have built a business that affords you the influence to be able to speak into certain groups or organizations or policies and things like that. You can role play that in your mind, and you should. It's not fleshy to use your imagination because it's a God-given part of our makeup, right? And so, I mean, you may have even heard me say this before, but, when somebody wants to train to be a pilot, okay, we do the same thing with them. But instead of it being in our mind, we take them out of their environment, we put them, into a flight simulator, and they literally get to go and be in the future, but they get to be in the future today, right? We can put them into a flight simulator and throw role plays and scenarios and situations to them so that they are prepared for a point in the future where that may happen. That's what our imagination is for us, right? We can go into the future and start role playing and preparing ourselves so that when these things arrive, it's not foreign to us. And so I think that when you crystallize the outcomes that you want for your life, and it's okay to dream, when you crystallize them, then what happens is, they take on a life of their own and they have a lot more purpose. And I think coming back to, the leveraging factor of why somebody does and why somebody doesn't go and achieve something great with their life is when you've gone out into the future, right, almost like the 12 spies go into the promised land to get a taste of it to come back. Now they can't not go because they've got a taste of their future. That's what our imagination can do. Because of that, right, it develops inside of us a hunger and a fortitude. And I think that's the difference. Some people just want it so bad that they'll pay the price. Some people want it so bad until the price gets too high, and then they wrap a theology around it as to why they can't keep going, right? And I think that's a massive distinction between the two. Okay, some have crystallized the end game. And by the way, how you imagine it today may not be how it arrives in the future, but at least you've gone down the path. At least you've used it as a tool to crystallize your outcomes, and it It may look like that, but how you get there is different, or maybe when you get there it's totally different. That's just your journey. But actually spending time to kind of think through the big picture will help you grasp it, and then you can come back from there and it, you know, the more you've explored the end game, the more it crystallizes. The more it crystallizes, the more fortitude it burns inside you. The more fortitude you've got inside of you, you know, the more passion and zeal you will bring to the every single day. And I think that's where the rubber hits the road, right? I really do. And so I kind of want to drop a little strategy or a tactic at the end, and that is this. Do you write down your goals every single morning? Because if you don't, I think you're missing out. I really think you're missing out of literally, you know, it takes no more than 2 minutes to rewrite if you want, or the reason why I suggest doing it every day and not necessarily in a fully structured way. If you do it fully structured every single day, it'll become so routine it doesn't have any power. If you just hack at this and do it as a discipline, but do it different and in your own way all the time, it will have more power because it'll be fresh, it'll spark new thoughts and ideas. But what would happen if you just grabbed a notebook, like a journal or whatever you normally use, and every single morning you literally sat down and wrote short, medium, and long, and then started to brain dump, right? What do you want to achieve in the short term? Short term, 90 days. What do you want to achieve in the long term? Medium term being maybe 1 year to 2 years. What do you want in the long term, right? Starting to get a big picture of 5 years out, 10 years out, 20 years out, whatever you want. The reason why I do it all the time is because I give myself license to change, especially the long term ones. I give myself license to change those things as they go because new information presents itself. I have no, you know, I just changed my mind, which, you know, is just okay as well. But what it does is it holds in front of me very closely the tracks I need to be wedded to get me to the end game. And it keeps in the forefront of my mind, why am I doing all this? All right. And all it is a short-term daily course correction to make sure that I'm on the path to get where I want to go. Because in my experience, when I don't do this, society, the world, you know, whatever, starts to dictate what I should value. And when the world dictates what I value, I can absolutely promise you that it will not give you what you want out of life. If society starts telling you what you want and how you should think, it will lead to destruction, right? It's basically like sitting in a seat of mockers, right? As Proverbs would say. You've got to choose yourself what this life is that you want to build. You and the Lord, right? That's all you're accountable for. And so with that in mind, like I do mine, and so I wrote some things down this morning, and I've kept the sensitive stuff out because it's like in the short term especially, there is some stuff in here because it's sensitive and I don't want to put it out on here. Some stuff I've got to work through in the very short term, and then the medium term and the long term. But literally, that's how I do it, right? It's just a few notes next to it. In fact, I'll give you one of the long term ones just to kind of give you an example of what it means and how I do it. Today, I wrote down in my long term goal section, I mean a bunch of things, but one of them is that the aeroplane that I want to buy for the ministry is a Piper M350 in green. Now you might be thinking, why the heck does he need a plane? Well, because it's a big old country, right? And I'm sick of sharing toilets with other people. And I do 45 to 50 flights a year. So I think I've earned the right to be on my own. But I want a plane, right? You know, and please, if that's offensive to you, then you're in the wrong group. But it's not tithes that goes to buying a plane, it's my own money. But I want a Piper M350. And you might think, well, why that one? Because it's the cheapest and smallest plane that I could do that gives me the speed and the range, and it's pressurized so that I don't have to wear a gas mask when we go really, really high, like a lot of other planes. And of course, I just like the Piper brand. So that's a thing for me. But there was a time a little while ago where it wasn't a Piper M350. There was a time a little while ago where it was a Pilatus PC-12, which is a way more expensive plane, but I don't really need it. But maybe, you know, and I might change my mind and go back. But it holds in front of me what I want, what I need, what I'm building towards, okay? And that's just an example of what I mean. Because I know that if I had a Piper M350, I would be able to touch a lot more lives. I mean, not now because it's illegal to like leave anything. But when we resume back to humans being able to be human, then I'll be able to touch more lives with a little Piper M350, because I'll be able to go from Wagga to Dubbo to Parks and home again in a day, instead of having to go to major capital cities and sleep overnights and blah 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 blah. That's my thing. So that's the exercise for you guys, right? It is just literally in the morning to just go short, medium, and long, and just to do a brain dump of what kind of goals you want to achieve, what outcomes you want. And by the way, it gets easier as you go, and I want to give you license to just write whatever you want. You can change your mind. You're going to do it again tomorrow. You might be writing something down and you're like, tomorrow you might go, that is ridiculous. Well, it's right for today, so just don't worry about it, right? You're going to do it every day. You're going to do 250 of these minimum a year. So just there are some stuff that have been on my goals list that I've chosen not to do because they were once valuable and then now they weren't. Just giving you license to dream and to crystallize and to document, and just to hold that information ahead of you, because what it does is it draws you forward every single day and helps you show up. And that is the name of the game. So what we've just done is we've gone, what's the long term, the big picture, and we've worked out the reason, right, and the tactics to get ourselves on the tracks every day. Because how do you have a successful life is a question I get asked. How do you have a successful life? It's very easy. Work out what a successful day looks like for you, and then string lots of them together.
You may have heard the phrase, the world abhors a vacuum. Aristotle, actually, was the one that said it. The world abhors a vacuum. I think he said it in Latin, but it translates to that. Essentially, what does that mean in business? It means that, your things will take as long as you allow them to take, meaning that like things fill up a vacuum just because they can, and so that if you give something space, then the world will fill that space. So if you give something space in business, then you will fill that space. And I think it's really interesting because we could kind of reverse it and say, okay, well, if then by nature, if we give something less space, then it'll just be filled as well. And so I'm just thinking about this from a productivity point of view. Like I see people that will sit down and say, okay, I'm going to do my emails now, and they will take an hour to do their emails. And I think, man, I wonder if you could have done that in 35 minutes instead of an hour. Because the world abhors a vacuum. Things will, expand and contract to the time allowed to do them. And so I just see a lot of people that aren't particularly productive in their time. And so, I just want to, from a productivity point of view, let's look at, what are the tasks that you're doing on a regular basis? And what if you were to shorten the deadlines? I'm sure that you would get everything done as you were, but you would do it in less time, meaning more spare time to put towards more high value tasks. So let's say, for example, you blocked out an hour for emails, but you set yourself an actual deadline to do it in 30 minutes. Let's say you failed and did it in 40 minutes and you went as hard as you could. You still got 20 minutes in the bank that you can now go and use to tweak AdWords, chase up quotes, do debtors. They're the difference makers in business. They're the things that separate the good from the great. So one of my, challenges to you this week is start shortening the deadlines, okay? Start to expect more of your time. If you've got a task that you normally allow 20 minutes for, give it 15 and see what happens. And you might be thinking, well, what's a 5-minute gain? A 5-minute gain could be the difference between winning a quote and losing a quote if you follow up 3 days earlier than you were going to before. 5 minutes could be the difference, by calling one of your debtors and getting the money in, sooner than you would have done. 5 minutes extra could be grabbing one of your team members, sitting down for 5 minutes and saying, hey, checking in with you. Is everything okay? What can I do to help? What do you need? All right. Those things are the separators. It doesn't require a huge amount of time to do great things in business. It's little bits of time that you've got to steal back out of everything else that you do. All right. So that's important to me, right? So just think about that, right? The tasks will take as long or as little as you allow them. So start to give yourself much tighter deadlines and you'll see your productivity go through the roof. And this morning, I just kind of want to, run through a bit of a concept that I have made mine in my life. And something that I think is just a really good tool to help reframe our perspective. You would have heard me on record say many times that the journey in building a big, successful business that you leverage yourself out of, that is influential, is long. That's a 10 to 20-year journey, which is the number one reason why most people don't ever build a great business, because they don't have the internal fortitude to last the distance. They keep changing their mind, or for whatever reason, just can't stick to the consistency of delivering for long enough. But yeah, like, I just think, there's a few things that have helped me last the distance, and one of those is this phrase: I believe life happens for me, not to me. I believe that life happens for me, not to me. I don't believe that life happens to me. I don't think that, that I am some sort of victim in this. I believe that everything is happening for my good. Now, if you think about that for a second, it may not actually be true, but if I had to choose, it's obviously going to help propel me forward, right? Believing life happens for me will help me push through, gives me a whole bunch of different lenses to see life through versus people that think life happens to them. When you think life happens for you, you're on the offensive. You can find the things about it and help them move forward. When you believe life happens to you, then you're already on the defense. You're on the back foot before you've even started. And so, what do I mean by life happens for me? I mean the good and the bad, actually. And sometimes in an extreme situation, this can be a bitter pill to swallow, that life happens for you, but it still helps you, right? And so, what do I mean by that? I mean that, all the good things that are happening in my life, they're happening for me, but I also mean the not so good things, And you guys know some of the story. You've probably picked it up around the traps, Coming from a split home is never fun. And there's a whole bunch of thoughts you have. So I was 8. There's a whole bunch of thoughts you have as an 8-year-old, and then onwards, that you probably shouldn't have to have at 8 years old when you have parents that split. But I mean, I'm certainly not unique. I think we're running at 50% of kids these days, coming from a split home or something like that. So that's a shame. But just understanding, like, for me, there would be some people, and definitely me early on before I learnt these tools, that I used to think that, like, there was a woe is me in that, whereas now I actually can reframe that entire situation and go, well, if life happens for me, not to me, then where's the good in all of this? And funnily enough, once I decided to look for it, there's heaps of good in coming from a split family. Is it ideal? No. Is there good in it? Yes. I'll just give you, for example, right? So, so my dad moved out when I was 8. And then my mum met a new guy when I was 10, and he's still around today. We've all emigrated out from Australia, from England to Australia. And, when I think about it, I'm like, I got to see the benefits of 2 dads, right? I got to see, because they're so different, these 2 guys, I got to draw from 2 completely different skill sets on how to become a man. Now, is it ideal? No, I think it's ideal that they would all be packaged up in some Superman. It's not the case, though, right? The case is I just got to draw inspiration from 2 different people, and so, to me, that's a huge, it's a wonderful privilege, actually. And so for me, I've been through all of those major events in my life where they haven't been great, and I've put them through the lenses of, I believe life happens for me, not to me, and what that's allowed me to do is see them in a way that propels me forward. So here's the process. This strategy is particularly good for when things have been, not so good, when you've had bad times, when you've had things happen to you that you didn't like, when you're going through trials, okay? So, here's the thing, right? If you want to go back and revisit something, then here's the framework that I put it through. The first thing I go is, how much responsibility am I prepared to take for that mistake? And this also can be a bitter pill to swallow, because there are some people that fully believe that they have no responsibility. I'm going to say to you that just as a tool to get past mistakes, you've got to be able to take at least 1% of the responsibility. And you don't need to take 100, although there'll be times when it's 100% your fault. But like people say to me, "Oh, well, I went into business with a business partner and they ripped me off." It's like, yeah, but who went into business with them? You did. Like how much fact checking did you do? Did you check ASIC for the database of the companies they've had in the past? Have you seen if they've ever been in insolvency or bankruptcy? Have you had a private investigator go? No. So no one ever does that stuff. So it's like, okay, so you didn't do as much as you possibly could to get it to work. Now, how much you are prepared to, what percentage are you prepared to take responsibility? So that's step number one. You've got to be able to take some responsibility because that's what re-engages you in the process of saying, okay, I've got an ownership here. I need to move forward. The second thing you've got to do when you're addressing a past mistake and using these new tools is you've got to be able to distill the lessons. You've got to distill the lessons, right? You've got to be able to go, okay, so I've taken some responsibility. Now, what are the lessons in this? Because once you take the lessons, you're not forced to keep repeating that, right? You can take the lesson and add them to your knowledge base of life, and they will help you moving forward. And then you're far less likely to have to go through that process again once you've learned the lessons, because now you can spot them and so forth, right? So you've got to be able to distill down the lessons, okay? And then the third step moving forward is you've then got to pray for anybody involved, ideally yourself too. So now that would be every situation. But like if you do have a business partner that rips you off, and I've certainly had that when I was younger, you've got to get to the point where you can pray for that person and pray God's richest blessing on that person. And I'll tell you what's interesting. You won't actually mean it at the start because you'll be saying it as words, but wanting to heap coals on their head. But what will end up happening is after a period of time of kind of praying it and believing it and meaning it, you will actually mean it. And you will get to the point where somebody could have completely ripped you off. And you actually want God to prosper them as much as you do want Him to prosper yourself, right? So that's an important part of the process, because if you can't pray for their prosperity, then you have to camp there. And if you camp there, then the bad situation from the past is still controlling you today, which is a really bad idea. And then the fourth step in the process is, okay, what's got to change moving forward? What systems and processes and checks and balances do I need in place so that I won't do this again? Just to kind of pick up on some examples from my life, I remember once I went into business with a guy, and we were doing a partnership, and it was terrible. We kind of jumped in together, got everything running, hit the ground, did the big marketing push, got really, really busy, but turns out that, we had some different values once we started working together. And we agreed fairly early on, maybe only within 12 months, that we would dissolve our partnership and go our own separate ways. And then right at the last minute, he found a clause in the situation that allowed him to steal a whole bunch of money out of the company bank account. And there was nothing I could do about it. And so it was a huge oversight on my part to allow that to happen. So going through this process, what are the processes moving forward? It's like, well, I have to be a 51% shareholder of a new business, of any business I'm in, right? Because I have to be the head and not the tail. So these are distinctions I made based on analyzing those mistakes, and then and a whole bunch of other things like that. I've got to be a there's got to be at least 3 signatories on a bank account if there's a partner, me, them, and somebody else, and things like that, just so that somebody can't just go in and swoop all the money like happened to me and run away. So yeah, that little framework, by the way, is going to really help you navigate the crap things that happen in our past, but also use them as fuel, use them as knowledge to be able to move forward and not make them again, but learn from them and build on them so that you're becoming a better and better and better entrepreneur. And of course, those things don't just relate to business. That's just a great strategy for life, but in this context that we're talking about here, these are great opportunities for you to, I don't know, either get some healing or at least get smarter about your, how you handle yourself moving forwards.
One of the mantras, one of the thoughts, one of my life's principles is actually that we need to always chase growth. We should be always chasing growth in business. And that throws up a lot of stuff for people. Some people just kind of go, of course. And then some people will do it until the point where they hit some sort of capacity, right? Or a pinch point. And so what I would say to you is, even when it gets hard, you need to always be chasing growth. And so, like, because the only reason why you would stop chasing growth is if one of two things: you've reached where you wanted to be, which is a very important point to move on from, or you just see that the cost of change to scale up to facilitate the growth is too much, in which case you've got to push through. Like, if you really want to scale a business, then you've got to always be chasing growth. I've said to you guys before, momentum is worth more than money, especially in the startup phase. And so, because what happens is, if you're pushing and pushing and pushing, and you're chasing growth, but you get to the point where you think that's enough, then you plateau, of course, because you're not chasing any growth. The problem is, if you ever want to start chasing growth again, the time and energy it takes you to get the momentum back to keep going on that cycle is 50 times as hard as if you had just maintained chasing growth. Okay. So, and so what do I mean by chasing growth? I guess for this exercise, I mean that we should always be chasing top line revenue. Okay. Because I mean, there's bottom line revenue, and I've been around long enough to hear all the cliche phrases of, turnover is vanity and whatever, profit is sanity, or, stuff like that. I'm like, yes, but they're all good phrases if you want to play small. But if you really want to build a great business, you need to always be moving the top line, right? And making your turnover increase exponentially and keep growing it year on year on year on year on year on year. Because interestingly, if you want to chase more profit, one of the greatest ways mathematically to get more profit is to do more turnover, because by default, your profit will grow at a faster percentage rate than your turnover, just by chasing more turnover. Because your fixed overhead stays the same, right? Whether you're doing, like, your rent doesn't go up if you do a bit more turnover. It may, because you may need to move premises, but rent is a fixed rate. So you could increase sales, but your rent is still what it is every month, right? So that's what I mean by, just by getting an increase in turnover without focusing on profit, you can get an upkick. So I guess I'm saying here that we need to always be mindful of the fact that we need to be adding to top line revenue, sales, turnover, income. That should be the focus. If you want to turn around and focus on profit, right, which is something that I do with our bigger clients, right? If you've got a bigger business, let's say you've got a team of 50 people, well, you might have a team of 3 or 4 people that are just in the sales and marketing and business development. So you can have those, but you could also, when you got a team of 50, you could also put 1 or 2 people and have them focused on profitability, because you got enough people that you can focus on 2 things at one time. When you're a small business, you don't have that luxury, right, of being able to be focused on moving the top end and moving the bottom end at the same time. So that's why you got to do it in seasons, right? At the start of your entrepreneurial journey, you just need to move the needle at the top end of the business, right? So, if you're doing 100 grand a year, you need to work out how to do 200 grand a year. If you're doing 400 grand a year, you need to work out how to do 800 grand a year. If you're doing $1 million, you got to work out how to do 2, right? That's what I mean by moving the needle. So you need to always be chasing growth, because the worst thing that can happen is you get more business than you can handle, and then you put a team and systems in place to help you. The worst thing that can happen is, you stop growing, and, just by default, you will start to lose in business. You might have even heard that it's the second law of some thermohydro something, and it's as true in science as it is for us. A tree, for example, is either growing or dying. There's no middle ground for a tree. A tree is either growing or it's dying. There is no middle ground. And business is the same. You're either growing it or it's dying, and there is no middle ground, right? Because even if you hold course and you keep your revenue at the same number, your competitors are getting better. So by default, you're dying. So that's why I'm saying go always be chase growth, okay? And I think there are 2 ways to chase growth, and this is where there's a little bit of strategy involved in it. I think you can either chase growth directly or indirectly, and I'll try and give you some examples so that you understand what I mean by that. Obviously, if you just decided, right, I'm going to double down on my marketing spend, right, I want twice as many leads, that is a direct way to grow, right? You are literally like doing something that literally moves the needle now, right? If you're doing 50 grand months and you're currently putting 5 grand a month into marketing, then literally sitting down and going, how do I put 10 grand into marketing right now, should see you move towards 100 grand a month or something, right? So that would really move the needle. So that's a very, very direct way to chase growth, right? You might be putting on a salesperson, right? That is a direct way to chase growth. That is literally, I'm spending this money right now because I want to, I want to have somebody that's focused on hunting and farming for my business right now, right? They're direct ways to chase growth. Another one is, I'm going to open another location. I'm currently in this town. I'm going to go to this town and double my footprint, right? That's a very direct way to chase growth, and it's a very, very, very good way to go and chase growth. All right, so there's those direct ways, and they're not always right. They're better than indirect ways, but I want you to understand the distinction so that you can make a strategic decision on which one you want. I think direct is obviously going to move the needle a lot quicker, a lot faster, right? So and a lot bigger. So that's just a fact, because you're literally putting something on that's directly going to affect it. But there are indirect ways to always be chasing growth. I'll give an example with us at the moment, right? So one of the reasons why I've moved offices is because I want to facilitate a place where we can have a better team, a bigger team, better team, and a better culture. All right, so I am indirectly preparing us for growth and chasing growth because I want an office space that's more conducive to the kind of team that I want to run. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why I've moved. I'll give you another example. We are not putting on any cohorts at the moment for KBU. We're not adding anybody to our masterclass groups, and we probably wouldn't put anybody in 4% Club, which is our big clients. And I'm not chasing any one-on-one clients, right? So at the moment, in terms of output, I am confident that for the next 90 days, I want to sit where we are. So indirectly, though, I always need to be chasing growth. Okay. So I'll give an example of how that plays out for me. I'm currently really strong, really hard on growing our database. Okay. So because I know that there's a direct correlation between the amount of people that know me, the amount of people that will buy from me at some point in the future. So right now, in a fairly aggressive way, we are marketing to a cold audience, people that have no idea who I am. We're inviting them into our world, right? This is just Facebook. We're doing Facebook and Instagram ads to a cold audience, offering them a 7-day devotional. It's a tool that I've had for, I think, 12 months. And then putting them through a sales funnel from they don't know me to they're opting in to they're getting remarketed to they're joining the 7-day devotional. And then on day 8, we have a self-liquidating offer where they can buy my books, okay? And the reason why we put the books at the end is because that helps fund the marketing. So effectively, I get them on my list for a lot less, right? But that's a self-liquidating offer. And so at the moment, right, we're pushing really, really hard. And I think I haven't looked at today's stats, but if I look at like last Friday, the rolling average was $2.19 to get somebody I don't know to opt in for the devotional and give me their email address. $2.19 for an email address of a Christian in business who has opted to like what we've got, right? That's what I mean by that's an indirect way to chase growth, because if I can add another 1,000, for example, 1,000 email addresses to our database, then that's 1,000 more people that I can push my weekly videos to and build that value and that brand into. And then of course it's 1,000 more people that I can go to, whatever is next for us. I'm probably going to run a Kingdom Business Summit before the end of the year, but do it completely virtually. There'll be another summit next year. There'll be whatever, right? So I'm not directly for the next 90 days looking to move the needle on the revenue, because I've got a few other projects that I'm working on, like moving office and writing a book and a whole bunch of other things. But in 90 days time, I need to be able to chase growth and move the needle directly. And the best way for me to do that is to build a database, right? So that's just trying to give you an example. That's not like building a database actually costs me money in the short term, right? It costs me money. So I'm not selling them anything. I'm liquidating a little bit of the marketing spend, but I'm not actually selling these people anything, which, by the way, is phenomenal in terms of developing a brand so that when you go to your database with something, they're really hungry for it because you haven't sold to them and now they want to buy something. So that's just an example of indirectly chasing growth. It's going to move the needle, but it doesn't right now. Okay. But it takes discipline and it takes playing the long game for you to do marketing in the short term that's not going to yield you anything. I don't know. If I was just to pick some figures out of the air, I'm probably going to spend $5,000 to $10,000 on building the list that way before I ever have anything to sell to them. And those numbers are relative. They don't have to be your numbers. You could spend more than that and less than that. But I'm just trying to give you an idea of, it takes a certain level of thinking around playing the long game, which is where all the money is. That drives that kind of strategy to want to make those investments over the long term.
Cool. All right. Well, what did I want to talk about? I like to use these Monday morning things just as, everyone kind of wakes up a little bit different. Some people are naturally pumped. Here we are Monday morning, fresh week of opportunity. Some people not so much. Maybe some people dragging their feet a little bit, to get started. And mate, some of that's probably dependent on what you're facing. Some of that is dependent on who you are, maybe as your personal culture, and some of that's the weather, right? I do feel sorry for those people in southern states in winter, where it's just a little bit harder to want to get out of bed and get going. So either way, you've got to get out of bed and you've got to go and crush it, right? You got to think like the caveman. It's kind of important that you get up and get out of the cave and go kill and drag home and eat. Otherwise, everyone starves, and business needs to be kind of put through those lenses. So what I thought I would talk to you about this morning is speed. An area that I see a lot of business people, especially in the earlier stages, get really, really wrong. All right. So I kind of want to look at, the way that the majority of people make decisions and why that is an area that is holding them back in business and in life, really. I believe that momentum is worth more than money. Okay. And I would say that probably changes once you've built a certain size and scale in business, and it doesn't change fully. But I would say that in those 1 to 5 years, or when you're in startup land doesn't mean you just started. Startup land means you're the person that has to do all the work, or most of it falls on you. That means you're still in startup land. At that stage, more than ever, momentum is worth more than money. So you should really consider losing money in exchange for momentum at any given choice, because it's momentum that gets you to the end goal. And the minute you stop, inertia kicks in, and it's very hard to get going again. If you were to go and study steam trains of old, right? When a steam train is stationary on the track and they want to get it going again, they've got to shovel coal in that furnace like a madman to get the temperature up, to produce the steam to get moving. But once it's at speed, they only have to put one shovel in every 15 minutes, right? And that's the difference. That's what momentum is. Keeping momentum is a lot less effort, right, than gaining momentum or starting momentum. And so, but a lot of people's decision-making process means that they get momentum and stop, get momentum and stop, get momentum and stop, because they spend too long deliberating on, which way to go on any given decision. And so that's why I'm going to suggest that speed is the answer. Okay, you need to start making decisions in business far quicker than you have been. Okay, so And so I think in the early stages, and that's where most of you are, in the early stages. Okay, let me try and preface that and give it some sort of, try and get out of that's fairly vague, early stages. when you've got a team of maybe 10 to 15 or more, and you can put people into departments, then you can kind of outsource some of the decision making. But up until that point, it's largely you. And so a lot of people spend far too long deliberating over which way to go on a topic, because they don't have the knowledge, or they're not 100% sure, or they lack some confidence, or the perceived risk of getting it wrong is really high. The framework that I put my decisions through to quickly ascertain how quickly I should make a decision is this. Will this matter in 5 years? Right? That's the framework that I put my decision making through. And you will find when you do that 98% of all the decisions you're about to make or will make, the answer will be no. And so if the answer is no to that question, then you just need to pick one. Okay? You just need to pick one, because it may have a short-term change to the answer, but it does not have any long-term impact. What does have a long-term impact is not making a decision, going incredibly slow, and not having momentum. That has a huge impact, but a decision doesn't. I'll give an example. Like the amount of people that have come to me over the years and said, we're really caught on which shade of blue to use in our logo. Not going to matter in 5 years' time. Pick one and go. If you don't like it, we can change it. People go, oh, I don't know whether I should, go all out and get the iPhone 11 Pro Max or save a little bit of money. Choose one. It's not going to matter in 5 years, right? I don't know. I don't know whether to hire a part-time person and save money, or a full-time person. Now we're edging towards something that may have a slight impact on 5 years' time. But it's not that decision between those two things, hire a part-timer to save money, or get somebody green and grow them cheap, or put somebody on who's fully qualified. Like those kind of decisions, pick one. And I say that flippantly because it's not really going to matter in 5 years' time. Okay. So, So I just want you to start. See, most people that I meet, when faced with a decision, they add time. They add time to the decision-making process, thinking that it's helping them. Now, it may. So here's my process, right? Will it matter in 5 years? Yes. Okay, now I'm prepared to add time because it's got gravity to the outcome. Will it matter in 5 years? No. I'm not prepared to add time. I would rather run the risk of getting it wrong. So if I'm picking one or two, I would rather run the risk of getting it wrong than going slow. Because you can change something, you can't change nothing, right? You might have even heard me say over the years that you can't park a stationary car. A car has to be moving to be able to park it and change direction. So will it matter in 5 years? Yes. Okay. That's a big deal. Now I'm prepared to give that time to get new knowledge, learn things to mitigate risk, and then make a decision. Will it matter in 5 years? No. Okay. Forced to make a decision right now, weigh it up, bang, go. Because I can bang, go, and realize in 3 months it was the wrong one and go and get the other one. And I'm still ahead of you because you just took too much time to make a decision. So just a little discipline, I think, that will be really valuable for you if you suffer like this, is basically just deciding you bring all of your hardest questions to the first thing in the day. Bring all of your hardest things that you've got to decide on earlier in your day, and then you literally just go, okay, this one, I'm going to choose that. This one, I'm going to choose that. This one, I'm going to choose that. Now go. Go, 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 go. You will find that you'll make better decisions, because once you're on a roll and you're focused and you're dialed in, you'll just start making the better decision anyway. But that's not how most people are like, oh, another decision to make. Should I host my hosting in Australia or overseas? Australia, go. Whatever it is that you are facing, it's just like, bang, go. Because it's just not going to make a difference on the big outcome. I'll give you a really interesting example of this. And this is okay. So we just used a business setting. Just to hop out of that for a second, and we'll come back to it. But just to kind of hop out of that, I want to go to a different setting where this plays out. Let's say you became a property investor. Okay, so and I meet a lot of those people, and it's aspirational, and I'm one, and I love it, right? But a lot of people are caught up in, do I flip houses or do I do buy and hold? Or like, do I do units or do I do houses? Because houses have got the land, but units and blah 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 blah. Like so that they spend years and years and years and more trying to ascertain which one is going to give me the edge because I'm so scared of getting it wrong that I'm paralyzed and I do nothing. Well, there's a woman in Brisbane. Her name is Lynn Summers. I've never met her, but she wrote some books specifically on property investing during like the 80s and 90s. And she actually went to the trouble of doing a study, taking into consideration current rents and current interest rates every single year over a 20-year period of should I buy houses and get the land or should I buy units? And what's the upshot of all of that over a 20-year period? Well, it was insane what came out. What came out was about a 2% variation in outcome between those two. So, one of them one of them had a net asset value of 5.63 million and one of them had a net asset value of 5.64 million. Like at the end of the time, because all it meant was units, you had to buy more of them. So you ended up having more units than you did houses. But you had a much bigger rental yield, but you had body corporate to pay. So it ended up being nearly the same. And it really intrigued me because the only thing you can distill from that is just get going. Just get going. And if you went down houses and you decided you want units, you can make that jump. And if you went down units and decided you want houses, you can make that jump. But you can't change broken, which is standing there doing nothing. So coming back to business, if we just apply that, that's what I mean by will it matter in 5 years? Because, I mean, I'm considering getting an office. Should I get this office, which is a half step towards the nice one, or do I just go in with the nice one? And I'm like, in 5 years' time, it's probably going to be the same because you spend more money on one place and it's nice and you stay. You spend less money on this one, but you've got to move through it. Just pick one, right? They're not crazy decisions. And so, one of your internal mantras need to be bring me those decisions. I make decisions quickly. Because for me, and I do it on the fly all the time, right? On the top, bang. Because I can fix that decision if it's broken, but I can't fix indecision. So, like for example, I put the call out. I wanted to employ somebody last week. So I put the call out on social. And then I put them through my entire process. Guy ends up in my boardroom. I ask him, we spend about 15 minutes together, and I'm like, do you want a job? That's it. Turns out, I've known this guy for 2 years in my world. And so I got to iron out a lot of those character checking steps because I already knew this guy. But I guess the point for me here is that I put him through a process, but very quickly, once I'm like, yep, that's a go, we're go time. That's it, we're go time. But that's not how most people are. But that's how I would like you to be. There are a few lessons that have come out of COVID. One of them that I can see quite quickly that was evident to me and a lot of people I was around was how much as a society we had idolized or created an idol out of the entrepreneur who works 20 hours a day, bleeds out of his eyeballs, and probably... And we probably looked past the fact that that entrepreneur was probably neglecting their family and their health and a whole bunch of other things. But because we had put that up on a pedestal, then we were kind of happy to glance over, the fact that they probably had an imbalance in their life. Yeah, and so, it's been a topic for me because, I don't believe in work-life balance. I don't believe we can put work in little boxes and it's not Pleasantville. Life is messy. And so
I believe that I believe in work-life blend because I think that our entrepreneurial ventures and our family life and our faith actually should all be one. Whatever we find ourselves doing, we should do it as if for the Lord, whether that's being a dad, being a husband, being a wife, being an entrepreneur, being a volunteer at church. So I kind of see blend as better. And then, of course, the way you do blend is everybody will be different. For some people, you can work at night. Other people can't work at night, and some people can do a Saturday morning and some people can't. And some people can get up at 5 o'clock and some people can't do that. Some people have got to do a school run. And so everybody's different in their approach. And I think that's part of the beauty of it. So I'm trying to give you freedom to just find your way of doing it. But I guess as I've explored this concept a little bit further, and I'm going to keep going on it because I think it's going to be probably a pretty big teaching of ours over the next 6 to 12 months in a post-COVID world. I kind of think to myself, if there was 3 layers, right? So 3 layers to life in terms of our capacity. The middle layer being like the equilibrium, the sustainable way to go. Well, below that, I think we've got boredom, right? And I think that's an interesting place. And then above that, we've got stress. And these words may change, but this will kind of give you a bit of an idea, right? So we have stress at the top. We've got some kind of good flow, good blend, and then underneath we've got boredom. And I think as a society, we've never discussed what tools we need when we are constantly going between those three levels. Like I'm having a lot of conversations with people at the moment who have got up into stress, into that top level, and they're staying there, and they've stayed there for a sustained period of time. And that's when you're going to get burnout, right? That's when you're going to get adrenal fatigue. That's when you cannot be on the rev limiter. You can't put an engine on the rev limiter and stay there without needing to completely rebuild it before you do it again. And so we're a little bit the same. And so I'm having a lot of conversations. Specifically, I think the problem lends itself to men more than women. I wouldn't say it's that clear cut, but I find men don't self-discover where the limits are as quickly as women. So I think they tend to just, whatever, just keep pushing, and it's not healthy. But then of course, like you meet those people that are on the rev limiter, and then everybody tells them that they're doing it wrong, so they go the other way, and they go out to they kind of get into boredom. And I can certainly tell you that I get bored quite easily. And it's okay for me to be aware of that, because when I'm bored, I am 3 decisions away from making a really stupid decision. When I get bored, that's when I start looking around too much for whatever else anything has to offer. And I am, I remember, when I started to learn this a few years ago, I was on holiday. Everyone told me you need a holiday, right? And their version of a holiday for me was, you need 14 days by a pool to completely check out. Well, that's fine for some people, and it might be fine for me for 3 or 4 days, but at 3 or 4 days, I am bored of sitting by a pool. And so, the problem that I found with with being in a resort by a pool many years ago was that right next to it was a bar, and I, like I said, I'm 4 decisions away from making a really bad decision, if you understand where I'm going. So I have to learn these things, right? And I guess this is the point. The point is not necessarily the 3 levels. The point is we have to have a conversation around what are the tools and strategies to manage ourselves when we're up in the ceiling and we're hitting the rev limit and we're stressed, because there'll always be business to get to in the next 10 minutes. There will always be a problem for us to, micromanage. But if we don't manage us, then we will crash and burn. What are our tools for managing boredom? Because as a high functioning, high energy business person, I don't do boredom well at all. So this is just an early on conversation, but I think one of the things that we need to do as individuals, because there's not going to be too many blanket rules that apply to everybody, apart from elevating the topic and letting us go away and think about it. We need to have the triggers that make us aware when we are on the rev limiter for too long, and we need to have the triggers that make us aware when we are in boredom and we are seeking adrenaline, because we'll get it. We will either get it in a healthy way or an unhealthy way, and obviously, you know, an unhealthy way can take a massive toll on you, you know, your family, your business, your walk with the Lord, and everything like that. So that's really, you know, kind of like the conversation for me. And if I could give you a little bit of homework out of this, okay, so you probably spend more time in one over the other, right? In terms of like into the ceiling or in the basement, you're probably on the rev limiter type of person, or getting bored quite quickly, or you bounce big time between the two. It's about bringing us back to the middle ground where we are sustainably building a business over the long term and looking after our faith and our family and our finance and our fitness and our fun. So I guess all I would say would be to just take what you know about you, self-auditing you for a minute, thinking about you for a minute, take what you know about you, and take that to your time with the Lord and say, Lord, you know, like, give me some, you know, give me some understanding of myself when I am spending too long on the rev limiter, and give some understanding of myself of what I do when I get bored, and what are some better choices and some better behaviors that I could adopt at that time to bring me back up to a sustainable way to build a business, right? That would be a thing. So for me, this is more about just elevating a topic, and you have to go self-discover it, because what works for me to bring me out of stress or out of boredom won't work for you. But why? Because we're all wired differently, with a different DNA and a different makeup and a different set of experiences and values and visions and fortitude and all those things that make us wonderfully unique. But I think it's a conversation that we need to have, and you need to have it with yourself and with your shepherd, and I think that would be a really good use of your time. You know, I was thinking this morning about you know, I guess more of the spiritual side of being a kingdom entrepreneur, and, you know, building a kingdom business, and, you know, kind of thinking through, it's been said that the opposite of faith is fear, but actually it's not. Scripture tells us that the opposite of faith is sight, because we walk by faith, not by sight. And so as I think that through, I think, all right, so, you know, fear may be a manifestation of what you see. But when we think about it, you know, we need to be motivated by our faith in the things that are unseen more than the things that are seen. So how do we put that into practice? Well, it would be very easy to be, you know, challenged, you know, maybe fearful as a result of, it could be very easy to be discouraged and, you know, procrastinate and all those things, as a result of what you see around you. Okay, so, you know, you may see, you know, cash flow that's not as strong as you want. You may see team members that are not as strong, or you know, that are playing up, or you might see, you know, potential, but you just can't achieve it. You may see, you know, prospects that don't convert. You may see all of those things, but you can't make your decisions based on those, right? Because we walk by faith. If we don't activate the faith element of being a kingdom entrepreneur, then we are doing this. We're almost doing this in a worldly way, but in some respects, you know, if we don't engage our faith, we're doing it worse than a worldly way. So we have to activate this part of our faith, and just know that irrespective of what we see around us, that we have to fully believe in here that our God is working in the background on our behalf 24/7. We have to, as an absolute baseline, we have to believe that, right? That our God, who we've chosen to live for, who wants to be involved in the big and the small details of our lives, our God is active behind the scenes 24/7, bringing together, you know, his plans and our desires when they line up with him. All right. So that's the hidden element. See, then irrespective of what you see, you know, you're moving forward. irrespective of, you know, whether what you see around you is good enough by your standards, you know that in a matter of time, you will move forward in spite of ourselves in many cases. So I say that to ultimately bring some maybe encouragement to a few of you who might be feeling like, you know, you're not moving fast enough, or you know, or for whatever reason you don't feel like you're, you know, achieving all you can. That's okay. We don't live by what you see. We live by faith, and that faith is that, you know, we can do a lot, and our God can do immeasurably more, right, than we can imagine. So in essence, we've got to switch out a lot of the language that we use and understand that even though we don't see it, our God that sits outside of time is working on on our plans and for our good. So that's one element. But I guess the second one that I see a lot of people miss is we walk by faith and not by sight. So they're the two extremes that we've spoken about. But what needs to be our reaction when we choose faith but see something different? What needs to be our reaction to a situation where, you know, we're like, I can see this kind of business, or I can see this kind of transaction, or I can see this kind of outcome in my mind. Like in faith, I can see it, but I can't see any evidence of it around me. I think the winners in life, then, like, what's the manifestation of seeing something in faith and not seeing it in sight? It's the ability to take radical action. Okay, if by faith you can see something but you don't see it working around you, some of that is uncontrollable by you, but the thing that is 100% controllable by you is your response to it and the action you want to take towards it. So I kind of want to say, irrespective of what you see in the natural, you need to start taking action, right? You know, putting in strategies, doing the hard work, you know, being really practical here, making the calls, running the ads, tweaking the web pages, building up your team. Like practically, they are the things that are 100% controllable by you, is the actions. So when you have a disconnect, right, between what your faith drives you towards, but what you see in the world around you, the only way to bridge that disconnect, like practically, is to start taking action towards it. Whereas I see a lot of people that have a dream for their life, right? They can see in faith what they want to achieve in their business, but practically around them, they see nothing but, you know, whatever, roadblocks and headaches and issues. Those people often don't take action because for whatever reason, they feel, you know, it gets the better of them. They lose motivation. They can't get the clarity, so they don't know what to do. So they have analysis paralysis, right? Or they just go into a deep funk. And when they're in that place, they don't make any smart decisions, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is it would be a natural response to have a big vision for your life and to see something in faith and hear a word from the Lord about the great work you're going to do. It would be a natural response when all you see around you is, you know, reasons why it can't work. The natural response would be to sit there and do nothing for a while. But I want to tell you, it does not help. You really, really, really need to, if you get in that place, to just start taking action, because it is controllable by you. Action could be, you know, it could be as big as, you know, I'm going to do my new 90-day plan and go and get amongst it. It could be as small as, I'm going to start making an extra 5 phone calls a day to people that don't know me to introduce myself and my company. It could be that small, you know, like that's the cool thing about, you know, things like phone calls as an example. Things like calling people you don't know to introduce your company is 100% controllable by you, has no cost attached to it, and you can start in 5 minutes. So whether it's that, right? Whether it's that, or whether it's, you know, whatever, you know, putting out an AdWords campaign, or firing up 3 videos, or, you know, shooting, you know, 7 videos today. If your default response when there is a disconnect between what you see in faith and what you see in the world around you right now, if your response is, what is controllable by me? What is action that I can possibly take? And then you go and get started. It won't be long before what you see around you in the real world, or maybe not in the real world, what you see around you in the physical world is exactly what you want to be achieving in the faith. All right. But, that's normal human reaction is not to take action. Normal human reaction is to get down about it, and that never produces great results. So just take stock. Are you living by sight, in which case you need to start taking action, or are you living by faith, which will just naturally draw out action? You can't live by faith and not take massive action. It doesn't matter who you study, right? Gideon, he had to take massive action. He went to war with 1% of the army that he started out with, right? It doesn't matter who you look at. Esther had to take massive action. She was about to get her head cut off by her husband, but she made supplication to the king, right? That's the faith zone right there. Joseph was given a dream. It took him his entire life of faith to step into that dream. So it doesn't matter where you're at today. What I'm saying is, peeps, is you do not want to be living by sight, because when you live by sight, it will render you a little bit useless. You want to live by faith, because faith requires a huge amount of action. And the beautiful thing about action is it is 100% controllable by you. So, one of my thoughts this morning to explore with you is the concept of rewards. Rewards, as I have tried to outline to you, and you've probably experienced yourself, the game of business and success in business, if calling success, a large business that doesn't require your time, that provides you cash flow, all those things that we aim for. If we just call that success for a minute, is a long road, a very long road. In fact, I think if we kind of knew how long it was at the start, we may have second guessed going into business. I mean, we would have sucked if we didn't, but we might have second guessed it. And so, one of the things that we need is we need tools, and we need to understand human psychology, because, if we don't, then we're just left to our own little world. And I think that's risky. I think that left to our own devices, we can often render ourselves kind of a bit useless or ineffective, maybe. And so understanding, the way we work as humans and the way we work as individuals is a really important part of having the tools to last the distance. And there are many aspects to lasting the distance, more than I'm going to talk about today. In fact, I wrote a book called Supernatural Thinking, which is designed to help you last the distance. But one of those aspects that have been really good for me, and all the people that I've worked with through these years, morning Scott, morning EJ, is rewards. So obviously when we ask you to do a 90-day plan, we get you to set a big quarterly goal and then set a reward and a punishment. It's not just there because it's fun. It's not even just there because it's a good coaching tool. It's actually there because that's how we as humans are wired. We like to chase down outcomes. And one of the mistakes that I see a lot of people make, especially in the faith, more so in the faith than outside of the faith, is they do not value the reward. So they'll set a reward because they'll be compliant, right? They'll sit with me and go, oh, okay, yeah, well, long weekend away with my spouse. But then when they hit the goal, they won't take it. And that is a huge mistake. And for most people, it's couched in one of two things. When they set a reward, hit the target, and don't take the reward, it's couched in either, no, building the business is the reward and I don't need the reward, or there is a little bit of bad theology in there that you shouldn't have anything. And there is an element of guilt and perhaps condemnation that comes in if you set a target, you hit it, you reward yourself, and then, you know, you're worried. Those people could be worried. What's everybody going to think of me? Am I rubbing it in people's face? You know, for whatever reason, you know, spending money on myself is a bad thing. And if you're in one of those two categories, you're in very dangerous ground. Because, well, I mean, you know, the Bible says pretty clearly that if you can't enjoy your work, then there's not much left in life. You know, if you want to go to Ecclesiastes, you know, and of course, you know, there's a whole section of Colossians that says, you know, the fruits of your labor are there to be enjoyed. And so it's not more religious or more righteous to deny yourself a reward. It could be smart to deny yourself a huge reward if you've only set a small goal. But I think, you know, in terms of the psychology behind this, when you set a goal and a reward and you hit the goal, and then of course, you know, if you take the reward, there is an entire conversation that happens inside your head, which is the variable of your success. Basically, what happens is, let's put a scenario. Let's say you said my big quarterly goal is to turn over 100,000, and I just picked a random figure. For some of you that's big, and for some of you that's small. But let's just say 100,000. And you know, and you said, okay, well that's a big stretch for me. So if you know, if I get it, I'm gonna buy myself a new watch. I'll just pick something nice and material. Well, I mean, what happens is, you know, people with an unhealthy mindset will achieve the goal, and then they'll go, no, I don't really need the watch, and I don't want to spend the money, and for whatever reason, I'm just not going to buy it. Okay, that's fine. So then what happens is the body, the brain, the psychology is thinking, there's no trade-off to this hard work. Why would I bother? Versus somebody who hits the target and says, yep, righto, I'm going out today. I'm gonna go watch shopping. Now, that doesn't matter. Like, I'm not even trying to couch this on whether you're buying a $20,000 watch, $2,000 watch, or a $500 watch. Like, this doesn't matter. The amount doesn't matter. If you said that's what you want to do, because you'll know where you fit, right, in the scheme of things. If you've set a $100,000 quarter and you're buying a $50,000 watch, you've missed the mark because you can't afford it. But, you know, but you can imagine the kind of person that goes, right, today is my reward, you know, and they kind of put slightly nicer clothes on than they would, and they go to the nice shops and they start windows over, they look around, they try some on, they go away for a coffee to kind of think through which one they want. See, when you're doing that, your whole mind is having a different conversation. It's going, I like this winning thing. I like this winning thing. And then you put the watch on, you've got that element of pride about it, and you know, and you feel good, and you walk a little bit taller for a minute, and every time you look at it, you're thinking, man, this, you know, I earned this through my diligence and my hard work, and the mind is starting to go, I can do another 90-day sprint. I can do another 90-day sprint here because I am enjoying this feeling. It was hard work, and now there is a reward, and it's okay for you to have that. And it doesn't matter if that watch is $250 or $2,500 or whatever you want to spend on a watch. It's not about the amount. Everybody will be different in that. It's about the process. The process is when you set a reward, you have to take it. Even if, you know, because I'm also not in for spending money you don't have on dumb stuff, right? I'm also that. But having said that, you know, like, you know, for me, the rewards when I first started were really affordable because I didn't want to spend money on dumb stuff. But you can still have rewards, right? You can still go, right, at the end of the, you know, the quarter, I'm going to take 4 days off and go camping with my family, right? That's not going to cost you a whole bunch of money. So, you know, but you've actually got to go. And then when you go and you put up the tent, and then you know, crack your first Diet Coke or whatever, and you sit around the fire and you're like, this is really worth it. I'm enjoying this. Let's do it all again, right? Same process. It's not about the money. It's about the process. Now, of course, as your business grows, so might the rewards or the dollar value of the rewards. And that's okay too. That is okay too. You can spend money on yourself. The only time it becomes a problem is when, you know, all your money goes on you and the business and there's none left for giving, or you know, when the Lord brings a ministry across your path, you can't help him. Now you're in trouble. But it's okay to spend money on yourself. And as your business grows, you're going to want to do that. all right, and you should, and it's okay. But if you said I'm going to take a weekend off with my spouse and go to Melbourne and watch a show, now pretending that we were allowed to like live like a normal time, then you could do that. That would be an amazing experience for you to go down, check in the hotel, fly if you fly there, like take your nice clothes and then get dressed up and go for dinner. Like, you've got to have that. Too many people are like, no, I'm not going to enjoy. I've got to deny the flesh. Yeah, deny the flesh with sin. Don't deny the flesh with the journey. Because I just see a lot of people get it wrong. A lot of people get it wrong. And it's funny. The reason why I kind of picked on a watch is because I've been looking at a new watch lately. I love my watch, by the way. I bought it on my honeymoon. I took Kimberly to the Maldives and we did diving and stuff. So I bought a bit of a diving watch. But actually, what day is it today? Tomorrow is our 12-year anniversary. She's not on, so I can afford to get it wrong. And so I've worn this every day for 12 years. In fact, every day and every night. I don't take it off. Unless I put on my iWatch now for running, which I did this morning. But I think, you can have two. You can have two. We've done well. The Lord's prospered us. We're very generous. I'm looking at, and I kind of got these financial goals that I want to hit by Christmas. And if I hit them, I've kind of lined up the watch I want to buy. So I guess you'll see me next year and I've either got a new watch and I hit my target or I didn't. But for me, I won't buy a watch unless I hit the target. See, I'm disciplined like that, right? I actually tie a lot of the things that I enjoy to rewards. I still buy myself things from time to time, but as a game, I really enjoy going, I want a new mountain bike. I want to hit this target this month. And then I'll buy myself a mountain bike. I could buy it whenever I wanted, but I just kind of enjoy the game of setting a reward. And I think it's just good for my psychology too, because then it pushes me, pulls me, and draws the best out of me. So anyway, that's a little bit about rewards, a little bit about how I work, and they don't have to be expensive. One of the funny things for me that I started back in 2012 was at the end of a Kingdom Business Summit, right? So most of you guys have been to one of those or more. At the end of a summit, right, whether that's, because back then it was one city, it was just the Gold Coast when we started, and now it's gone to 5. It's 5 weeks on the road, it's 5 weeks of logistics, it's 5 weeks of prayer team, prophetic team, intercessors, band, it's a big task. At the end of it, I go and I buy myself a pair of cufflinks. That's my thing. That's my reward. It's if you look at it, that's not an expensive exercise really. But it's a nice thing. I enjoy it. At the end of the summit, I get some downtime. I go down to the best shops and I spend a little bit of time going, which ones am I going to have today? So that's for me. By the way, it's always been inside of me to have those little rewards, but it's not always inside everybody else. And so some people overthink it and get it wrong.